What's happening, Expeditioners? It's Pete here. Want to tell you about a conversation that I just had with my friend Arlene. She is a career coach, but what makes her different is just about everything. And I was excited to have her on to talk about what she does because I think it's really unique. So, as opposed to just talking about what you want out of a career, she works with hundreds of companies and businesses so that if there's a connection she can make directly to them, then you can get involved in a business right away. And the best part about this is that she gets paid by those businesses if you decide to do some business with them. So there is no cost to you. It's like working with a real estate agent. If you don't buy, they don't get paid. And if you do buy, they get paid by someone else. So it just seemed like such an interesting, unique type of business model I wanted to share with you because I know there are a lot of people in between jobs or rethinking what they want out of life, rethinking their own career path, looking for more stability, looking for something to do with their family, looking for something that's a long-term play, maybe something that builds generational wealth. And so I had a conversation with her to share what she does, how she works, who she works with, what you can expect. So if hopefully you are one of these people that are thinking about what you want out of life, maybe she would be a great place to start. So let's get into the conversation with my friend Arlene and talk about what might be your future. So I wanted to ask you, Arlene, more about what you do, just very specifically, because it seems so interesting. Because when I first heard you talking about career coaching, I thought, oh, it's more of the self-led discussion about kind of what you want out of a career and just kind of more like self-discovery. But what you do is more than that, right? You actually connect people with potential like entrepreneurship type of work. And it seemed very different than the other offerings that I've heard of from other people. So I kind of wanted to revisit that and kind of get a picture of exactly what you do because I thought it's so unique.
Yeah. So I appreciate you asking that because as a financial guy, really, there are three big ways that you're going to earn income. One is investment. One is a traditional W-2 type of job. And the other is by owning some kind of business. And really what I don't deal with investments. That's not something I do. Leaving that to the experts like you. But people, they know what they know. So they know the W-2 world. And so you said you're talking with a recruiter friend. Exactly. Because that's what people know and that's what they're comfortable with. And a lot of people, that's what they really need. And they want to be in that W-2 world. The one thing that people don't know that much about is entrepreneurship, having your own type of business. And that's really the kind of education that I give to people. So first, as a career coach, I'm like, okay, what are your goals? What are your boundaries in terms of you need this much income? You need this kind of lifestyle. Is the W-2 job going to get you that income and that lifestyle? We'll leave the long-term wealth for another discussion. Is the W-2 job that you're looking for, is that going to give you what you need? But then there's also what you want. You want more income than that. You want a different type of lifestyle, maybe a little more flexibility. I hear that a lot. And oftentimes entrepreneurship is what's going to give you that flexibility. And work hard enough, it can give you that income too. Starting your own business, it's not something easy. You have to really think about, okay, how much effort do I want to put into this? What exactly do I want to do? Is there a need in my community for it? And that's what I do. Once people figure out what it is they absolutely need and what they want, then it's, okay, I can connect you with some franchise companies so that you can learn about what it looks like to own a business. I work with franchise companies because they already have a business model that they use that they know works, and it works well enough that they want to share it with others. So that's really the best place to learn what it looks like to own a business. And of course, you take people through a whole process.
When you're working with people and you bring up the topic of entrepreneurship and owning your own business, and some people have done it, are you finding that they've never done it, they're excited, or they're fearful, or they're just concerned about it? What kind of reaction do you get from people? And then how do you work with them to paint an accurate picture? I'm just kind of curious if people are maybe overly excited. Sometimes I talk to people about owning a small business and they just think that all you got to do is turn on the lights and hey, the money's going to flow and you can't stop them. And then on the other hand, some people are just so worried about the taxes or the working late nights or the weekends that they just don't want to give up their lifestyle too. So I see a wide range of reactions to the idea of being an entrepreneur. How about you?
Oh, yeah, I definitely see a wide reaction too. There are a lot of people who are just like, this is awesome. And I'm like, okay, the whole idea of the field of dreams, you build it and they will come. That's not really true. It's not
Right.
true. You have to actually get yourself out there and to some extent sell yourself, even if that's personally, I hate selling myself. That was not something that I love doing. I hate it with a passion, but I'm like, I believe in what I'm doing so much. Let me just share with others. This is what I do. It's up to you whether you want to work with me or not. I'm not going to force you, and I'm not a salesperson. But there are some people that are like, yes, this is what I want to do. And I'm like, okay, if this is what you want to do, what do you know about it? What do you need to learn? Most people, though, I work with, they're apprehensive about it. Oh, no, this is not something I want to do. What do you know about it? And that's often the big question of, okay, well, what do you know about it? If that's what you think you know, do you know for sure? What information do you have? I also work with people, they are gung-ho, they want to start their own business, and they know they want to start their own independent business. They don't want to work with a franchise. Two things. One, if you talk with a franchise, you're going to get some more information. But two, you really have to think about owning a business, not only as the technician, because you're really good at what you do, but also as the manager and the entrepreneur. You have to think strategically. You can't get bogged down in, I'm really good at this. It's okay. What's your strategy for getting new people, for building that business? And for that, I'm not going to lie, I have a book on my desk called The E-Myth Revisited. And people who are gung-ho, I'm like, just start with this book. It was written a long time ago. Start there.
No, it was one of the very first books my father gave me. It was just called The E-Myth at that time. And then obviously The E-Myth Revisited.
Yeah.
It's just such a fundamentally a good one. If you haven't read it, it's a very good book.
I was going to tell you, one of the additions with the E-Myth Revisited is a story of a woman who has her own business who gets burnt out because she's trying to do it all. When you reach that point, it's hire someone, because that peace of mind, I'm sure you've been there before, and you'll probably be there a week or two where it's like, this person's going to take care of it. I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Have you ever dealt with burnout, Arlene? I have. It's funny because I've been in corporate for a really long time, and I was fortunate to have jobs I really enjoyed. And so sometimes I really didn't feel like I was working because I enjoyed it. But then there were some times when I just got in with a team of people or an organization that just didn't move, kind of the one that turned me to go on my own. I was done with corporate at that time. People had always talked about burnout, and I never really had that issue. And then in the course of a year, man, I just really flamed out. And it was just weird in that I think how it manifested itself was not how I expected. I expected to be depressed and angry and all these things. It just was like there was no motivation. I just was like out of energy. I just didn't want to fight with people. I just wanted to check in, check out, those kinds of things. And to me, I really did hit a place of burnout, and it's a really tough thing to shift yourself out of once you get into it.
Yeah, I will fully agree with that. And I think it happens not only in corporate, that was what I experienced in higher education as well. That lack of motivation. And it was just, there's something that's better. And I knew there's something better. I need to find it. I need to get myself out of that situation. That's another thing that I do with people, with my coaching clients. Some people come to me and they're like, I need to get out of this situation. And I'm like, yes. However, you never run from something. You always run to something else. Yeah, you're going to be uncomfortable for a while, but if you just leave it, you don't know where you're going. Find somewhere to go to first.
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, you just run into a vacuum, which is the worst possible thing too. There's no support there. But yeah, I want to circle back again to your entrepreneur kind of route here, because like I said, this is really unique. And so you have some businesses that your organization is affiliated with that have franchises, right? I guess one thing is if you're talking to someone and they just want to get a job, they just want to be a W-2 person, you're probably talking them through that and what they need to do to just get back out into the real world. But if they are now maybe interested in going down this path of becoming an entrepreneur, what happens then? Can you walk me through what that process would be? What are you doing from a discovery in testing them and validating that's really what they want to do? And then how are you trying to match up their interests with what's available? I don't know what's available. I've never franchised a business or anything like that, so I don't know anything about it. I generally think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I usually assume that there's some startup costs and buying into a business that's established because you're buying that business system. Bust any of these myths that I have about it and give me the inside scoop, because I'm just fascinated by this because it's so unique. And especially when we're in a situation where There are a lot of people whose jobs are being replaced by AI, whether they are or aren't. There are a lot of people that are thinking about new career paths and also rethinking how much money do you need? Because I think a lot of people have been so focused on getting as much as they can, negotiating the best salaries. And when they get to a place in life where they're like, hey, I've had the surplus, which is great, but I'm not happy. How much do I really need to get me back into the zone of being satisfied with my life, my career, having the life that I really want? And I think a lot of people are sometimes surprised at what number they need that can deliver that for them. So I'm just kind of curious, your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah. I'll address the financial piece first. So what's fascinating is there are many different ways you can fund a business. A lot of people think, oh, I don't have that money. If you've got some kind of retirement fund, like a 401k, that can actually be rolled over into your business. Find angel investors, people that might support you. There are different types of loans. So there are actually lots of funding options that are out there to fund a business. You can use someone else's money to fund your own business. So that's one piece of education that I give people. And most of the time, that's like the one investment thing that I do and financial piece that I talk about. And it's mostly just look at this information. And then I work with a few companies. That's what they do. They figure out finances and they will talk with people and give them a little bit more information. One of the things I do as a coach is I'm the conduit. Let's figure out your goals and what you're looking for. And then let me connect you with people who you can really learn from. You're not just going to learn from me. I'm going to give you to the experts. You can learn from them. And that's also why I have that discussion with people. What is it that you absolutely need? Because you're right. It's like some people, when it gets down to the basics, I really need to be able to pay my mortgage and my bills and get food. And I don't really need as much as I think I do, but I want more. Okay. Oh, you're going to do that. And if you're an entrepreneur, oftentimes, let's not sugarcoat this. It takes a little bit for you to actually start getting that income. It just does. So you have to work at it and be patient. So that's one of the harsh realities.
Yes, if it were just as simple as turning something on, everyone would do it. Some are easier than others, but that's why I like the idea of we're not necessarily trying to create business designers. You're taking these established businesses and taking people with that will and the interest and being able to equip them right out of the gate for some success. Obviously, building that business along the way. I'm kind of curious then, what's the next step then? Are you doing some sort of assessment? Hey, this is your talent, or you want to be in food services, or you want to, I don't know, pray in a wedding invitation? I'm just kind of curious, like, then how are you trying to match up people appropriately with business that are available? What would be the next step for someone that says, yeah, let's take a look at what you have?
Yeah. So typically, when I take people through the whole process, the first step is really to figure out who they are. And there's a survey that we do that's a good communication tool. Gives out a report that's really describing who a person is in terms of how they behave and what drives them. The other one is a worksheet, and it begins with the question, if you were to look at your life 1 year from today, what needs to have happened for you to be happy with your progress? And then there are some other parts to it to figure out, okay, what fear do you have? What are your opportunities? What are your strengths? And a lot of times it's through that conversation that I'm able to find out what is it that a person really enjoys doing? What are the things that they would never want to do again? And just teasing out some of those ideas. But really, it's not so much of a match as it is, okay, you tell me, because that's the only way I'm going to be able to get that information. I can't really give someone a test and it says, oh, this is what you're really good at. It's no more, that might be what you're good at, but is that what you really want? Probably not. So let's figure out what it is that you want, not only what your skills are, but what you want. And as adults, we know our skills. We typically know some of our limitations. We just need something to show. Yes, this is my limitation. Yes, this is my strength. And that's part of those initial conversations. And then as far as, okay, if you are thinking about owning a business, I work with about 230 different franchise companies across the board, all very different kinds, different models, different industries, just almost anything you want. There's probably a franchise for it. In fact, I'd say most of them are AI resistant. You also have recession resistant. Like, for example, something happens in your home, you're going to need a restoration service. There's a couple of franchises for that because you've got to fix this. How are you going to do it? Great. There's a company. They work with your insurance company. Very little on the consumer's part. And the franchisee gets a nice paycheck. They got to do the work, but it's a great business. And there are lots of other examples. And as far as
restoration companies are great. My hot water heater broke when I was on vacation. And so it flooded the first floor of my house for a week while the water kept pouring out. And to your point, again, the homeowner insurance is going to cover it. They were covering it. They want to cover it because they want it done right. The restoration company was great. They brought in all these fans and everything and do that first level of rebuilding because they pull down stuff to make sure everything is cleaned and that you're not going to have health issues. And I had never even known that because I think it's a construction company or a contractor who does that kind of stuff, but they're prepared. They know exactly how to handle fire and accidents and all this stuff. It takes a load off your own mind when you're like, I know it's getting done right. It was nothing out of pocket for me. I'm a big fan of those types of companies. What else you got in your pocket? Because I love those businesses.
Really, if you look around, just look around your home, any service that you might want or need, there's probably a franchise for it. Go to a restaurant. There is probably a franchise that helps with that. Restroom cleaning, restoration of, let's say, the vinyl in the seat, the booth gets ripped. There's a company that can help to repair that. Cleaning out the grease traps. Yes, there is a franchise company that can do that too. That's what's amazing. And the other thing is people like, oh, franchise companies, it's McDonald's. But every franchise company that you're going to find on a local level, they are owned by local people. So the difference between some kind of small local business and a franchise business is that someone decided to invest some funds in order to get the business system and get support to help them be successful. That's really the difference between an independent business and franchise company.
Yeah. I just know a friend of mine also just became a franchisee of a company that does home modifications for elderly, those stairway, escalator ride kind of things and ramps and things like that. As we just are an aging population and we get more people into retirement, he just sees kind of more business in the future, even as he builds a business now, that there are going to be more people that need these kinds of things and potentially covered by insurance. So I like that forward thinking as well, that you're building that business and maybe the best years are ahead of you on it. I'm just getting curious. It sounds a little bit like there are some different levels of business. Is there a big difference in the amount of initial cost to get into some of these different types of businesses? If I would love to get into a business, but I don't have a lot of upfront money, or some people will have maybe lots of money to get into something, maybe with a brick and mortar. But what kind of range is there for people that are thinking, hey, I've got lots of resources or limited resources?
That's a great question. And I would say typically on the lower end, you can go a little bit higher, but about that 50,000 is typically what you're going to find. And a lot of times it's built in, like that 50,000 gets you, it's like the franchise fee, which gets you often technology support, finding customers, maybe also the cost of a vehicle, getting your vehicle wrapped. And so I say like on that lower end, it's like that 50,000 is like a raw estimate. And it could go up to much, much higher. Like you said, if you've got a brick and mortar location, then that's going to be pretty expensive. I know we at least used to have one that was probably in the million or 2 million, maybe even 3 million range, because it was a large brick and mortar location and there was insurance costs and there was all this other costs that go into it. As someone goes down the journey of talking with a franchisor, they learn about the franchise. One of the big things is an FDD, a franchise disclosure document. And those are documents that every franchise is required to have. They have to register it with many states. Illinois, definitely, not necessarily in every state, but it's a large document that's basically government mandated. You have to report this information. And one piece of information that's in there is some of that financial information. This is the low end. This is the high end of what we require. And of course, this is as you go down the line with a franchisor, these documents are not at all publicly available. And in fact, if someone sees them, they have to sign an agreement saying, I will not just publish this, because they get updated every year. And it is some proprietary information in there.
If you have an interest in a variety of different potential franchises or they're not sure about the business, how many can they take a look at with you to figure out like what the right one is for them? Because it sounds like with hundreds, someone could just be going through catalogs all the time. How do you handle that process?
So typically I start people with 3. And it's just a nice way of comparing and contrasting. And usually 2 of them are ones that someone is, okay, this sounds really interesting. For example, if someone's, I'm really interested in the restoration kind of thing, I'll put a restoration thing in there. If they want something else with like property, I'm like, okay, I'll put something else with homes and properties in there. And then I'll throw in some kind of curveball, just a completely different model, something that might not, because there's things like home-based or virtual ones or requiring a brick and mortar, different investment levels, different types of services. We've talked a little bit about home services or restaurant services, but senior services, educational services. Some you're working directly with businesses. Some you're working directly with customers and consumers. There's just so many different kinds of models. So I'm like, start with 3. Listen to them, find out what they have to say, and then we have conversations doing some comparing and contrasting. What do you like about this system? What do you not like about this system? Would this actually get you to your goals or not? And the statistic is when people invest in a business, 95% of the time they're investing in something they never thought that they would consider because it fits their goals. But I always start with 3. And then if we absolutely need to, we do more. But we try to limit that because you could learn about every business out there, or you could be like, okay, let me just figure out what are the models? What are the investments? How does this actually work?
Yeah, I'm so fascinated by this because I think when you mentioned $50,000, $100,000 to get into a business, that's a much lower price point than maybe I was assuming it would take to get into some of these businesses. Because one of the traditional things that I think a lot of people think about when they think about additional income is real estate. But when I think about real estate, even a starter home or a small piece of real estate, you're talking about anywhere from $150,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. And the amount of income that you'll be able to generate off that is going to be pretty small too. When you're talking about a business that maybe is $50,000 or $100,000 startup, we're talking about being able to get into something that you wouldn't be able to necessarily get into real estate without financing, but also has the potential, I'm assuming, to generate variable amounts of income depending on how much you work or scale or how many people you bring on. What are your kind of thoughts on, obviously, the more traditional routes on investments that a lot of people think about or know about versus something like this, which I hadn't even thought about?
Yeah. Something that's central to how I operate, what I think is important. If you think about a W-2 job, there are a lot of people, you've heard it too. They live paycheck to paycheck. It's that immediate gratification. I've got the money, I'm going to spend it. What I want for people, if you're thinking about a business, you're putting that money in now. The idea is that you're still going to be at least mostly happy with it 5 years from now. It's still going to be running. You're going to be generating more income. It's one of those delayed gratification. You're investing that money 5 years from now, you're making money, things are going well, as opposed to this W-2 job, here's my paycheck, we're going to use the money, paycheck to paycheck.
And company gets downsized or the economy goes flat and you're out of a job, right? There's no control over that where there is some ownership on the business. I also think about kind of like the legacy piece of it too. I try to get my son involved. I've got a small business, so, I can pay him for some stuff and things like that, and he can put money in his bank and all that. But part of what I think about, and I'll be really lucky if it happens, that if I can seed something that is modestly successful while I'm doing it, but then he can take it on, and maybe it's not even a full-time job, but a side hustle or something that adds a little stability to his life. To me, that would be a nice advantage that I didn't have growing up, and maybe something you can control, something you can sink your teeth into and really enjoy, regardless of how much money it's making. But like I said, if it makes the payments on the car or the house or something, that could be a game changer for a lot of people too, and be able to keep that within the family. It seems like what you're doing too is getting people out of necessarily just that W-2 rat race and then putting them into something the one they can control, they have more ownership over, maybe even have a little bit of a legacy play with it as well.
Yeah, I've had a couple of people recently talk about generational wealth. That's a core value of theirs. And it's so true and can be very important. I not only want to have this business, I want to bring in my family to do this business. And I'll tell you a little bit of my background. My father had his own painting business. Long story how he started it. didn't even think about the fact that he was an entrepreneur until I started doing this. Oh, yeah, I did have that entrepreneur spirit kind of ingrained in me. That was what my father did. Basically, the business ended with him. I did not want to paint. But it's also, I learned the skills because I had to work with him all through high school and college. But I learned those skills that I'm like, if I absolutely ever needed to, I could go start a painting business. I have that skill. I know how to do it. I know how to do it well. So it's not only that, if you're really thinking about bringing in other people, that generational wealth, bringing in your family, engaging them in your business, it can be a good bonding thing. But like you said, the other person could grow it. But even if they decided, I don't really want to do that, you're still teaching them those skills to be successful.
And even if they don't want to do it, back to the E-Myth, I mean, you can find some people that can do the things that you don't want to do that can really get into it. Sometimes I'm so biased. I don't like doing something. I can't imagine anyone love doing it, but that's what they love. They're just different personalities. Who are the people that should say, hey, listen, I really need to talk to Arlene? Is it people in between careers? Is it people in burnout? Should they be a certain age and asset level? I'm just kind of curious, like, what's the sweet spot for you that you're talking to people with that capability, maybe primed for that mindset of looking at alternatives and not necessarily dedicated or committed to one path or the other at this point?
Yeah, that's a great question because really I work with people who are often, I would say career transition. That's one group. And that's typically how I find people. My business development, it's looking for people who are in or potentially in that career transition. But as for having conversations and going further, I need people to have an open mind and be willing to learn. I was in higher education at first and I taught for many years. And I came to the conclusion, I can't motivate people to learn. I can give them avenues. I can try to encourage. I cannot get someone to intrinsically be motivated to learn. If they don't want to learn, they're not going to learn. And so that's really the people that I work with. If you're not willing to learn, if you're not open-minded enough, if you're like, I'm good, I'm like, great, we don't have to talk. But if you are willing to learn, those are the conversations that we have. And really, it's people across the board. Some people who like, I really don't have anything to invest. That's fine. You might have that motivation, be like, okay, I don't have anything to invest right now. Give me a couple of years. I'm going to build up that nest egg and I'm going to be like, all right, I'm ready to invest now. But they have to be open to learning. That's it.
Learning a mindset, building and improving mindset. I like what you're talking about. I'm just so intrigued because it's just a whole different path on what I would necessarily think of when I hear career coaching or even life coaching or anything like that, because what you have really is like this practical kind of place that people can go. It's not just necessarily that discovery, but it's obviously discovery of here's a business. And I was thinking along the lines of, you were talking about people can take a loan, which I'm fully supportive of. One of the things that I try to dispel in my program is I know that society-wise, we're always down on debt, right? Debt is evil, it takes advantage of us. But to me, debt is a tool. Now, if you can't handle debt, for sure, stay away from it. But for other people that can look at debt as a tool that they can use to maybe get themselves into a game that they otherwise would not be able to, that they would otherwise have to spend a lifetime saving up to get into that game. A debt against a business, and especially if it's not a personal guarantee, a debt specifically on that or that asset is the way to go. If I could fully finance a property and have that income just come to me, then that would be fantastic as long as the numbers worked out there. But the other thing I was thinking of is, what about a parent and a child? We kind of talked about that legacy play, but I feel like I know some parents who are retired. They don't want to get involved in stuff, but they have assets and they want to help out their kids. And I've had this conversation with people, like, should they just pre-inherit wealth to them, right? While they're still alive, maybe help out the kids? Should they wait until they pass on? But I was thinking this could be an opportunity where the parent doesn't want to get involved in the business, but they've got the assets. Maybe the child doesn't have the assets, but they do have the time, the resources, the energy, creativity to do this. That could be a good marriage too, because both get what they want out of this at this point, working with someone like you on this.
In fact, I've definitely have some experiences with that. Of the parents, I really want to help my child. What's wrong with co-ownership? Like, you're the funding person. You've got this other person, but your child is the co-owner of this business. Yeah, you're putting in the funds, but they have to put in the work. And if they don't work, there's no business. So the onus is on the child too to then build that business. The parent is really helping out financially, maybe giving some advisement, just helping out. My father, he didn't push any of us, my sisters or I, to go into painting. But if I said, yeah, I want to be a painter, he'd be like, all right, let's go. Let me teach you everything. Let me teach you how to paint walls, because I painted everything but walls when I was a teenager because, yeah.
You got that steady hand. You get to do that detail work.
That's one way to put it. Or I got really bored really quickly. So it was like, okay, we're going to make you paint lattice work and steps and standing heat registers.
I learned how to paint my parents' yard fence each summer because the paint would come off. And I actually learned after probably the first couple of years that you want to do it right. You just don't want to pay the price next summer with paint peeling and scraping and sanding. If you just invest a little more time, do it right, make sure the surfaces are prepped correctly, it's going to save you so much pain the following years. But I also learned I did not want to be a painter, at least not that kind. Maybe fine art or something. Maybe that'd be fun. Right. But no, this is great. I just think it's such a unique service that you have here. And then you have a unique way of even getting paid, right? You're not necessarily charging by the hour for this, which is also what I would assume. And I also would assume that would have been pretty high. Maybe you can just enlighten me again, make sure I've got this right about what it costs to work with you and get your expertise and your connections.
Yeah, so the first thing is I do this because I really enjoy it. It's something that I love to help people. That's just something that really is one of my values, one of my core values. I want to help others. And I love that I don't have to charge people for what I do. I get to have conversations with people from all over the place, all walks of life, which I absolutely love. And I don't have to charge anyone for it. The way that I get paid is if someone chooses to work with one of the franchise companies I work with, or one of the financial companies, or I have another company that does resume writing and interview assistance. If they choose to invest with one of them, they're the ones who give me a placement fee. So I don't have to charge people, which I absolutely love because it's like that delayed gratification. I'll get paid. I've never been motivated by money. I've always been motivated by wanting to help others.
Yeah, no, I would have assumed it would have been very expensive hourly because so many people in this profession that do this kind of work are very expensive. What a great way to be able to work with people. And it really removes any excuse that people would have to say, hey, I've been thinking about this, but I don't have money to pay you. I don't have money to get the business. Hey, should start having these conversations right away. And then the last question here too is, where do you work with people? Obviously, I know we've got to meet here in person in the upper northern Illinois area. Do your services extend beyond kind of the geography of our local area here?
It absolutely does. I typically work with people in an online format. I connect with people on Zoom, and I've been able to work with people from all over the country, but I've even randomly been connected with people in other countries. I was talking with someone she said, I'm moving to Washington, D.C. with my partner who's a diplomat. I'll be there for 3 years. I'm like, great, let's have a conversation of what you're going to do when you get to Washington, D.C. Most likely, this person will not get into a business or a franchise, but I'm like, what do you want to do? And it's fascinating to me just being able to talk with someone like that. I'm like, wow, you're in this country and wow, I've never been there before. They're like, if you come visit, you know who to look up. Absolutely, I do. But that's just something really important for me. I get to work with all, like I said, different walks of life, different people, different locations. And I love learning. This is something that's just core to me, something that I've always loved doing. Probably why I got into higher education in the first place. And this is just another way of doing it. Now I get to learn about all different people, their interests, their walk of life. And I absolutely love what I do. I wouldn't have it any other way. And just a sidebar as well, I got into this because I knew I wanted to leave higher education. And I worked with my own coach in the same capacity. And honestly, if he had told me, oh, this is going to cost you $100 an hour, I'd be like, great, thanks, I'm out. Because I'm cheapskate. I know that about myself. So being able to talk with a coach who didn't charge me, who allowed me opportunities to learn, that was really what got me into doing this myself. So I'm glad to be able to pass it on to others.
The circle is complete. I agree with you. I try to save money is all over. It's very easy to spend money. It's harder to earn money. And it's very easy to kind of get into that trap of even spending money, thinking that you're making progress towards money. The easiest way is just to conserve it. I love this, Arlene. Thank you so much for sitting down, clarifying for me. This is what I wanted personally. And then I should mention that you were just generous enough to allow me to record this because I think it's going to help a lot of other people too. And honestly, explain it in a way that makes sense to other people being able to hear from you, because to me, I don't know that I could communicate this well enough. It almost sounds a little too good to be true in many cases. And so I think that people, when they get their head around it and how the business operates and the opportunity for them to look at something else with someone's expertise guiding them through that, I think is very reassuring, because I've gone to franchise trade shows where you're just going and you're just getting bombarded with, hey, you want to get into automated coffee? Hey, you want to get into pastries or whatever? And I don't know anything about that business. I don't know anything about what it takes to start up. It's a little overwhelming. I've never gone that route to franchise anything, but it's one of those things where I wouldn't know where to start. I don't know people in those businesses. So having you with this experience here is really invaluable. So thank you so much for doing this.
I'm glad to do it. Like I said, I like passing it along. What I have been able to learn about owning my own business, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I love what I do and like to help others to find that out for themselves. What is it that you want to do? What experience do you want for your life?
Arlene, can you give me the details for your business? How can people reach out to you? How should they reach out to you? Where can they find you? Learn more.
This is my own business. I work with the Entrepreneur Source. I think you can see it behind me there.
Yeah.
And the best way to find me, you can either look for me on LinkedIn. I do have a unique name. It is Arlene Vignon Dubio. If you look up Arlene Vignon or Arlene Dubio, I will pop up. The best way to reach me is through email, and it's avignon@esourcecoach.com. Probably the easiest way to find me. But you can also look for me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. Yeah.
Love it. I've got your card here sitting in front of me, so I'm going to put links to you as well in the description if anyone wants to reach out. But man, I just think, yeah, it's just such a really fascinating business, really helpful for people that are looking for a real opportunity, a real choice, and really something that they can own for the rest of their life or their career in many cases, which we don't with a job, which we don't as an employee, right? Those are someone else's businesses that they have ownership over that we can be a part of. And certainly that can be the right fit for probably, to be honest, the majority of the people. I think that's probably the right strategy. But for those people that have this itch, the desire, you just want to take a spin on the one chance of life that you've got, man, I just think it could be rewarding. And I think sometimes people are just surprised to the upside of what can happen with a little bit of consistent action and building towards a particular goal. Thank you so much. It's been really helpful. It's helped me get my head around what you do, because when we met, I should say this, when we met and you were telling me about what you do, I just thought, hey, you're going to help me identify my skills and my preferences and stuff like that. Awesome. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Peter, for your time. I really appreciate it.